Okay, so in the last video we tried to set up this MS-DOS 6.22 and Windows 3.1 VM using VirtualBox, but we were getting a hard, it said bad error in MS-DOS extender or something like that, when Windows Setup was trying to copy files from disk 3. So we're going to try PCem now, or PCem. I'm not sure exactly what how that's pronounced, but anyway, it's a little bit more, I don't know, retro operating system friendly because it emulates way more hardware. Yeah, it's just a much better overall solution for this sort of thing, although it does run slower because it tries to be cycle accurate to the CPUs that it's emulating. So anyway, we're going to choose an AMI 486 based machine here. Let's do the AMI WinBIOS 486. Okay, we're going to make that a 486 DX266, everyone's favorite 486 CPU for retro stuff. Anyhow, let's see, I'm going to give it 16 megabytes of memory. Display, we definitely don't want CGA. Let's see, do we want to do Super VGA of some sort here? Let's see. No, I think for this one, it would make more sense to go with just vanilla VGA. I mean, we could do an Oak Technologies sort of setup here, but it might be more appropriate to do that in a future video because I don't have device drivers for the Super VGA cards here for Windows 3.1, and some of them can be really unreliable and whatnot. Pardon me. Anyway, so we'll just go with vanilla VGA. That'll give us 640 by 480 resolution. Will give us 16 colors. Not too bad for the era. Sound-wise, I'm going to go with Sound Blaster 1.5. That's supported out of the box in Windows 3.1. Actually, let's just go with 1.0. And so it'll be really easy to configure and install and whatnot. Storage. Okay, so we want our first floppy drive to be 1.44 meg, 3.5 inch. And let's not do a second floppy drive. 24x CD-ROM is good. And now we'll create the hard drive. New. Let's see, what type do we want? Okay, yeah, these are all pretty tiny. I think I'm going to do a type 47 and make it around 500 megabytes. Now let's do 270. That's a nice size. To choose a place to put it. In this case, I'm just going to plop it right on the desktop. 486 drive C.image. That'll be fine. Okay. It reminds us to partition and format the new drive. That'll be handled by MS-DOS setup. Microsoft 2-button mouse is good. Standard joystick's fine. Don't need a network card. Just check over everything here. It's good so far. Yeah, okay. So now we've got a generic 486 here. So I will hit load. And of course, it's going to want to run the setup utility because, well, that's what you do. Standard. Floppy A, 1.44 meg 3.5. Floppy B not installed. And that's good for that. Advanced. Okay, let's see. That looks good. Chipset. Looks good. Okay, yeah. Let's see. Detect C. Works for me. Accept parameters. And I think we can save changes and exit now. Okay, that's good. So, we of course don't have a operating system on here yet, so we'll go to disk, change drive A, and we're going to go to my emulation folder here, operating system disks, MS-DOS 6.22, disk 1. Press any key when ready. There we go, it's starting MS-DOS. Okay. Yes, it wants to configure unallocated disk space. That just means running fdisk and setting up the DOS partition, which we'll go ahead and let it do. And it's done that. And in the MS-DOS era, anytime you altered the partition table, DOS would not reread the partition table automatically. You had to reboot in order to get those new structures into the kernel's memory space. So, go ahead and press enter and it'll reboot again. And it should start MS-DOS from the setup disk and begin formatting that hard drive. Yep, formatting C. One of the reasons I didn't want to make the drive any bigger than what I did was that, well, it just takes a longer time in PCem to format a hard drive than it would in VirtualBox. The date's wrong, but that's okay. Yes, we can put the DOS files in C:\DOS, just the standard place. And this one's going to take a while. Okay, now it wants disk 2. Change drive A. Disk2.image. Thankfully, there's only three primary setup disks for DOS 6.22, as well as the supplemental utilities, which we'll go ahead and install. It includes Edlin and the DOS shell and some other things like that. I think it even includes a link editor for linking together object files from your various compilers, at least Microsoft compilers. It's something they used to do. Any version of DOS or even OS2 back in the day would include a linker right out of the box. It wasn't something that in those days was actually shipped with a compiler like you find in slightly more modern setups. I mean, even by the time of DOS 6.22, linkers were shipped with all of the various Microsoft compilers, you know, Microsoft C and C++, Basic PDS, Visual Basic for MS-DOS. They all shipped with linkers, which is probably why they relegated the linker to the supplemental utilities disk. Now, back in the day when DOS 6.22 came out, that didn't actually come with the distribution. You had to order that separately. A little mail-in card that came in the box for ordering your supplemental utilities. But I like to install it because, you know, having Edlin is nice for those masochistic moments when you feel like torturing yourself with a line-based editor like that. Haven't found much use for the DOS shell, but it's kind of neat to go look at. Okay, so setup is complete. Now we can eject drive A, as it's asking, and press enter. It's going to ask if we want to reboot. Yep, we sure do. Now it should come back up with MS-DOS right on the hard drive. First thing I want to do here, now that DOS is basically set up, is reconfigure Config.SYS and AUTOEXEC.BAT to something a little bit more sane, or that I would consider sane, because their default allocations for file handles, buffers, that kind of stuff is a little bit low in my opinion. I like to put files at 40. I think this is more because I'm more of a productivity and development software enthusiast. Games really won't care about this, but things like WordPerfect, some compilers, things like that need access to more file handles than the defaults that MS-DOS configures for you. And the same with buffers. I like to put that at, and let's do 20 buffers. Then I don't think we actually need setver. Just a waste of precious conventional memory here. That looks good to me. And actually, I'm not going to put DOS high either. Because Windows has its own specific requirements here, I tend to like to keep it pretty basic at the MS-DOS level. You know, once we get CD-ROM support done and once we get Windows 3.1 installed, then we'll go back through, maybe add some more drivers, things like that, and get MEMMAKER run so we can optimize that conventional memory to some extent. It won't be as good as QEMM or 386 Max or any of those things, but it's, you know, it's decent. It's passable. The thing I like to do is edit AUTOEXEC.BAT because this is a huge annoyance to me. This echo offline, what it does is it suppresses the display of your AUTOEXEC.BAT commands during boot up. But for some reason, MS-DOS setup likes to put the smart drive disk caching stuff above the echo off, and it just clutters up your boot screen output. And I don't like it, so I like to move it down. Never remember these weird OS2-ish cut, copy, paste keyboard bindings. But yeah. Good enough. Okay. Let's make sure there's no disk in drive A. And let's do a reboot here just to make sure all that looks good. PCem. That's the XMS driver. Extended memory specification. So let's see. Yes, I want to set up the CD-ROM drive now. And I have the drivers on this DOS 6.22.image disk. That's the standard DOS 6.22 boot disk from allbootdisks.com. Contains standard CD-ROM and mouse drivers. Excuse me. I'm going to create some directories here. After CD-ROM and enter MS Mouse, CD to CD-ROM, copy a:/cd1.sys dot. Done. Go back to MS Mouse, copy a:/mouse.star dot. And now we'll edit our config.sys again. After HIMEM loads, I'm going to do device equals c:/CD-ROM /cd1.sys /d:/mscd001. That is an arbitrary name, but I've been using it for the past 25 years, so it's kind of just a standard practice of mine. What that does is it gives the CD-ROM device the handle of MSCD001 in the MS-DOS table of device drivers. And MSCDEX in AUTOEXEC.BAT will actually be given that same parameter so that it'll be able to expose the file systems on that device. File system. I'll add msmouse, mouse.sys, and then let's edit AUTOEXEC.BAT, and then c:/DOS/mscdx.exe. That stands for Microsoft CD-ROM extensions. Give it that same device handle. It's kind of interesting the way MS-DOS supports things like CD-ROM file systems. DOS, I want to say it was either 2.x or 3.x, somewhere in there, added the support for what they call network redirectors. So you could have you could mount a shared NetBEUI, NetBIOS sort of file system from MS-DOS. It was used for Microsoft/IBM LAN Manager and things like that. The CD-ROM extensions actually use the network redirector, but for local purposes. And this just tells it which device handle to use. Now, one thing I didn't think about, since we're in PCem right now, I am not sure if our BIOS has recognized the CD-ROM drive. But we'll find out, because we're going to do a reboot and see if it picks it up. If not, we'll probably just take the CD-ROM stuff out of it. I don't think we need it. I mean, I like to have it there just to show you kind of how to do it, but for Windows 3.1, we're going to be installing it from floppy disk images anyway. And you know, I always thought it would have been nice if Microsoft had distributed Windows 3.1 or Windows for Workgroups 3.11 on CD-ROM, but for some reason they never did. Well, it didn't come into vogue until Windows 95. And, you know, you can make your own CD-ROM image for 3.1 just by copying all of the files from all of the floppy disks into one directory, then burning that to a CD and making an ISO image. But, you know, that's not the official way, and we're trying to do the official way here. So, obviously, emulation notwithstanding, but the procedure is roughly the same on a physical machine, although obviously you'd be swapping physical floppy disks in and out of the machine in that case. So let's go ahead and eject the floppy and do a reboot. See if that CD-ROM drive is recognized. Ah, it did find it. That's excellent. Okay, so that's the end of the first video in the series. We have... Actually, no, it's not. We're going to go ahead and install those supplemental tools for MS-DOS. Let's see. Change drive A. We'll put in subdisk, colon. Never remember quite how to install this. I think they went cheap on it and did a batch file. Yep, it's setup.bat. Okay, so they want you to give it a path to where DOS is, which is C:\DOS. Set up all of it. Our monitor, our display card is VGA, so we'll hit F5. Yes, that's correct. Yeah, that's fine. We can overwrite that. I don't know why they do that. Gives us some basic programs here. I guess those could be run in QBasic. Does it give us GW Basic? That would be kind of cool. Let's go to drive C. Exit. Star.exe. Let's see. Yeah, no, it doesn't. But it does give us QBasic. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and run the DOS shell just so you can see what that's like. Run it in graphical mode. Well, there it is. Just a very simple file manager, and I think it has a task swapper that you can switch between two simultaneous tasks. It's very reminiscent of the Windows 1.0 MS-DOS executive. Well, actually, Windows 1 and 2.x also. There's the MS-DOS executive. Looks very much like this shell. Not really much to see there. Let's see. Enable task swapper. Yeah, I was right. That's the facility you'd use to swap between tasks with the DOS shell. Okay, well that was kind of cool. Edlin, I won't show that because, well, yeah. Edlin config.sys. P, I think we'll print it out. Yep. 1 to 3P. Yeah, I still remember it. Port edit, yes. Okay. So, let's go ahead and run good old MEMMAKER. See if we get some good results there. I should actually eject the floppy drive because it's going to want to do reboots. Okay, continue. Express setup was good. Don't need EMS. It's the bank switching sort of memory that I have talked about at some length in one of my other videos. Okay, let's restart. I think these restarts are kind of to run some utilities that give MEMMAKER information on how big each of the running drivers and TSR programs and whatnot are, and that's about it. Okay. Only found one possible configuration. Our setup here is pretty simple, so one thing about MEMMAKER is if you install any new TSRs or install Windows or what have you, you kind of need to rerun it to re-optimize. Okay, so we freed about close to 100 kilobytes. That's pretty good. Got 580K here. All right. We'll take a look at what that did. Okay, yeah. It added the EMM386 with the no EMS flag to disable expanded memory, and it set up some device high commands to load the CD-ROM and Mouse drivers into high memory, and it put DOS in the UMB region. UMB is an upper memory block. That's a block of contiguous memory between the 640K and 1 meg boundary, that upper 384K, that DOS can put things in if you know where those free blocks are, and if the things you want to put there can fit into a contiguous one of them. And that's kind of what that does. Look at what it did to AUTOEXEC.BAT. Yep, and it loaded Smart Drive and the CD-ROM extensions into high memory as well. And we can run mem. So we've got 567K of conventional memory. Believe it or not, that would not be enough for some MS-DOS games. The later ones got really, really crazy. Now, Quarterdeck had QEMM that was better than this, better than MEMMAKER, and Qualitas had 386 max. They were both able to free up more conventional memory than MEMMAKER, but they weren't quite as reliable or compatible with all your programs. Anyhow, I think that's it for our first video in this series. Since we had problems with Windows 3.1 last time, I'm going to do the setup of that in another video in case it fails as well on PCem. That way we still have a useful video about MS-DOS configuration, even if Windows 3.1 doesn't work. So, see you next time.